stand against the evil that's plaguing our nation.
If you don't like abortion, don't have one.
The only thing that can be said to be objective truth is that there is no objective truth.
Like, you kill a baby fetus, the same thing as killing any old inanimate object.
I would argue that we certainly are not all created equal.
Mark is training a new generation of leaders.
To take on the culture of death and win.
You young people, it's your movement now. It's not your parents anymore.
The blood that is shed cries out to God from the ground for justice.
And now, here's Mark.
You've tuned into the Mark Harrington Show with your radio activist, Mark Harrington, and you can find out more at markharrington.org. I'm also the president and founder of Created Equal, which is the pro-life organization that routinely goes to colleges and high schools all across America, reaching young people on the abortion issue. Today, we're going to be talking about why is it that many churches are silent on abortion, or better put, we're going to be talking about biblical shepherding. What's it look like to be a shepherd of God's people and to rightly present the pro-life issue? And in order to do that, I have in studio my good friend, Michael Spencer. And Michael was a pastor for 23 years, right?
Yep, that's right.
And the director of Life Training Institute, the Midwest director. Sorry, I don't want to do away with Scott. Yeah, Scott Klusendorf's organization is, if you know me, you know Scott. Scott's commonly referred to in his information that he gives out as far as pro-life information and apologetics. And I've had Scott on the show. But Life Training Institute is Scott Klusendorf's organization, and Mike was, as of recently, the Midwest director of Life Training Institute, and he's starting something new.
That's right.
So what is that, Mike?
Well, first of all, thank you, Mark, for having me on. It's good to be here. Yeah, I'm starting a ministry called Project Life Voice, and this is a gospel-driven human rights organization that equips and trains pro-life ambassadors to speak intelligently and to act sacrificially on behalf of the preborn.
Amen. Well, you've been but you pastored for 23 years.
That's right. Yeah, I was.
So your background. I just want people to listen who are listening to the program. Pastors know you were, or you still have a pastor's heart.
Right.
So 23 years in the pastorate.
That's right. Yeah, I left my pastoral role 8 years ago when Scott offered me the opportunity to come on staff with LTI, which was a tremendous blessing and has opened doors for me that never would have opened otherwise.
Right.
You know, for me, Mark, I didn't leave the pastorate burned out, bummed out, or pushed out, although I felt all of those emotions on a weekly basis.
Right,
but no, I loved being a pastor. I miss it. But I left because frankly, I was on the other side of the issue. I considered myself pro-choice until coming to faith in Christ in 1983. And about 8 months after that happened, the church that I was attending showed the movie The Silent Scream. And I saw for the first time with my own eyes what abortion did to little girls and boys, and I couldn't believe it.
Did you ever see Hard Truth?
I did, yeah. Later during rescue.
Okay,
sure.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that just changed me profoundly. I did go on.
So the visuals work, Mike?
The visuals absolutely work.
They reached you.
Of course, and they've reached so many, and they continue to reach so many. They absolutely work. You know, my burden has been that, my burden has been for the church and for pastors in particular.
Right.
As you know, I don't think it's grumpy or cynical to say that the overwhelming majority of pastors are silent when it comes to the subject of abortion.
Yes,
so that's really what's fueling my desire here, my mission.
Well, I appreciate that, because without the church, we can't win. We all know that, right?
Yeah,
as much as we do on the streets and outreach and the public square, reaching people, changing hearts and minds, if we don't have the church involved, we don't have Christians out supporting us in prayer and financially and on the streets. We need workers. We can't win. If the pulpits aren't speaking to it, we're not going to win the battle.
That's exactly right.
I'm glad you're doing it. It's a difficult work you're doing, but I appreciate your reaching out. So projectlifevoice.com is the website.
Projectlifevoice.com, yep.
And this is the official launch. You'll be doing this starting soon. So tell us a little bit more about that. What is the vision of Project Life Voice?
Sure.
I mean, before you were speaking on apologetics, going
Right,
to high schools
right,
and colleges.
right.
You're still going to be doing some of
Yeah,
that.
I'll
of
still be
course.
doing those things, but I will be focusing a little more narrowly, or at least more directly, on reaching churches and pastors. My pastoral background, thankfully, has opened up a lot of those doors for me. Not as many as I would like to
Helps.
see open, but they are opening up.
Yeah, it helps.
There is a group, there is, and only the Lord knows what the number is, but there is a group of pastors out there who really are biblically based, godly men, but many of these guys have not been trained in their seminaries to speak on the issue. In fact, many of them have been told to stay away from it, that it's, it's radioactive, just stay away from it. And, but I'm finding as I get into pastoral circles, pastors' luncheons and breakfasts and things like that I do, I'm finding that a lot of these guys are coming up to me afterwards and saying, thank you. I know I need to do this. I don't know what to do. And that's where I'm able to come alongside. But I will continue to speak in a variety of settings, and wherever I'm invited, I'll go.
All right. My guest is Michael Spencer, and he is with Project Life Voice. And you can check out his website at projectlifevoice.com. Let's go through a couple of these objections that we commonly hear from Christians and pastors when it comes to abortion. I get this, you get this. When you bring it up, they say, well, I'll pray about it.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean,
that's good.
Yeah,
right?
and that's that's one of the
but
primary,
sometimes it's an excuse.
Yeah, exactly. It is one of the primary biblical duties of the pastor. The scriptures are clear. Ephesians 6:18 says, be alert always, and always keep on praying for the Lord's people. And if we, as most pastors, at least most evangelical pastors, which kind of is the circle that I'm traveling in, of course, most of them don't deny the humanity or even the personhood of the unborn child. If we really believe that the unborn child is a human being, then we should be praying for them as well. So praying is important, but you're right. So often that is used as an excuse. It's really an excuse to justify spiritual malpractice, or pulpit malpractice is what it is. And, when your pastor, if your pastor says that, well, I think we ought to just be praying about it, call us bluff and say, well, can we start Sunday, Pastor?
Yeah,
Will you lead us?
Will
you lead us from the pulpit on Sunday morning, praying on behalf of the little ones in this community who are scheduled to die this week, on behalf of their mothers, pray for the staff, the abortionist himself. Why are we ashamed of the unborn? We'll pray for every other people group, but this people group, in many cases, I like to say it this way: why don't we just treat them like our enemies? Jesus said, love your enemies and pray for them. Do good to those who persecute.
It's a good one.
If we won't love the unborn as our neighbors, can we at least love them as our enemies? Just that low standard. Can they at least meet that standard?
It's better than being ignored,
which
is what's happening often.
I mean, we pray for our enemies, and it gives us a heart for them. If we don't have a heart for the unborn, then let's start praying for them.
Here's another one, and I get this often. Abortion's a political issue. Abortion's a social issue. It's not about the gospel.
Yeah. Well, abortion is a political issue, but it's more accurate to say that it's a moral, spiritual issue that has been politicized.
Right.
And every moral issue is eventually politicized. The redefining of marriage, war, slavery, and so on and so forth.
It's going to make its way into the political realm.
Exactly. But that cannot render it off limits for the body of Christ, or for the pulpit, for the pastor. I guess you could say it's a social issue too. But first and foremost, this is a gospel issue. It's a loving your neighbor as yourself issue. Right. No doubt. Here's another. By the way, nobody ever uses that excuse to justify not talking about sex trafficking victims or homeless people.
Why is that? I mean, really, why is it that the abortion issue is just taboo? We're talking right now. We're in the midst of all this Black Lives Matter stuff, and I'm for it. We ought to be treating Black people equally as any other person. But why is it that people jump on the bandwagon, but when it comes to abortion, they avoid it?
Well, I think there's a lot of reasons for that, and I don't know that we could do justice to it in this short of time. But I think one of the reasons is, and I don't mean to sound cynical. I want to say up front that I'm grateful for shepherds, for pastors who are biblically minded, who are courageous and compassionate and speak boldly from their pulpit. Right. And those guys are out there.
They are.
But I think for those that don't speak to it, I mean, there's a variety of reasons. One of the reasons is fear, a fear of offending, a fear of inflicting more harm on those who've had abortions, which I think is a legitimate concern.
Yeah, and a lot of people have. A lot of folks in the pulpit have.
But that shouldn't keep us silent. Another reason is ignorance. I think a lot of pastors don't know what abortion actually does to children, or don't realize how it's impacting their own local community. And then the apathy. I hate to say it, but in every profession, you have people who really don't care about the people they serve. Yeah. You've got attorneys that don't care about their clients. Yeah. You've got some doctors who don't care about their patients.
Some other motivation going on there.
And so too, sadly, tragically, in the church, in the pulpit, we have shepherds who frankly don't care about the unborn. Jesus had a word for them: hirelings. When the wolf comes, they abandon the sheep, they run away because they care nothing for the flock, the scripture says. And so I think there's a variety of reasons. One of them, again, is just really a lack of education and a lack of training on how to do this. So
here's another one. Abortion is a controversial and divisive issue.
Mm-hmm.
I'm called to protect the unity of my church. This is what you'll hear.
Yeah, sure.
And I experienced this with COVID. Right now, COVID, you got Black Lives Matter.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like pastors feel like they're doing everything they can just to keep it together.
Right.
And they don't want to insert this one in there.
Right. Well, I guess my response to that is that if you're remaining silent because your church is divided over it, you're not protecting unity. You're protecting division. And so the shepherd, that's division in your church over the issue of whether or not we should kill children or rescue them. If your church is divided over that, that's an indictment on your pastoral,
That's
on your
right,
pastoring
on your
work.
preaching. That's
that
right.
becomes the call, not the excuse to go silent.
Mm-hmm. No doubt. I'm talking to Mike Spencer, and if you want to find out more, you can go to projectlifevoice.com. That's projectlifevoice.com. Mike's was a pastor for 23 years, also the Midwest director for Life Training Institute, Scott Klusendorf's organization, training people in pro-life apologetics all across America. So, Mike, let's move on here. Why'd you leave the pastor? You talked a little bit about that.
Yeah.
And now you spent 8 years in the pro-life movement, teaching apologetics, and now
Right.
starting this new adventure.
Again, I did leave the pastorate. There's no question about that. And as I said, I didn't leave, with any angst or any frustration or anything. I left, quite honestly, because I feel such a burden that the church has gone silent on this issue. Mm-hmm. There's a sense, though, in which I would say I really haven't left the pastorate, that my flock is the preborn.
Yeah.
And I really see it that way. They are an unreached people group. We devote millions and millions of dollars all around to send missionaries all around the world. And then we ignore the most oppressed, most marginalized, most unreached people group right under our noses. And so I'm one guy. I'm not gonna change the whole world, but I can change my corner of it. And that's what has motivated me to do this.
So in our audience right now, there are plenty of pastors. Mm-hmm. We're broadcasted on WRFD, which is a Salem radio, and there's all kinds of pastors listening to right now. If you would, and I'd like to close off with this too, but speak to them right now.
Mm-hmm.
Your mission is to
equip them.
To equip them.
To equip them.
If you would directly, just speak to them.
Yeah, I'd be glad to do that. Well, Pastor, I would say this. We're called as shepherds to shepherd the whole flock of God, even those who have yet to be born, whether they have been beaten and abandoned in a ditch or denied legal protection and abandoned in the womb. And I would say this too, it was a great joy for me, and it was a burden. There's no question about it, that this is a burden for pastors to speak to the issue of abortion. But more than that, it's a joy to speak up for the least of these, those that were so precious to Christ. We celebrate the incarnation, every Christmas and through other times throughout the year. To celebrate the incarnation and then not to speak up on behalf of Christ's little ones is really sending a mixed signal to our congregations. And I would say this, Pastor, first of all, you have a golden opportunity. This is a gospel opportunity, and you need to see it that way. Mm-hmm. This is a golden opportunity for you. You are in an enviable position. You have the power not to stop all abortions, but you do have the power to stop almost all of them in your church. You wield enormous influence in your pulpits, and I would encourage you to use it, not to shrink back from that. It's costing you something if you're silent. It's not only costing you the fact that you become culpable for the blood of children that is shed in your church potentially, but you're also losing the opportunity. Let me restate it. You're losing respect and credibility from your congregation. When you won't speak to the most relevant, defining moral issue of our time, you're losing great credibility. It's costing you more than you may realize. In my work, I am constantly having people come up to me after my talks and saying, my pastor's a really good guy, but he won't talk about abortion. And the question is not, is your pastor a good guy? The question is your pastor a good shepherd? That's what we're called to be. So I want to encourage you, Pastor, be bold, be compassionate, be wise, but be relentless on this subject in your pulpit, and watch God honor that.
Mike Spencer is with me today. You can go to projectlifevoice.com to find out more. Mike, what would you do? If a pastor contacted you and said, "Hey, I'm interested. I heard you on the radio. I heard you on Mark's show."
Sure.
What would you do? What would it look like?
Well, I would first of all find out a little bit about his church, where they're at on the issue.
You meet with him, right? I imagine, or by phone,
either
or
by phone if he's on the other side of the United States or something, or in person. But I am available to do whatever I can, whether that's walking pastors through how to do this. I can give sermon outlines to them. I can give my PowerPoint to them. I've stolen everything from other people anyway, so I'm happy to pass it on, okay? The other thing I'm able to do, if the pastor says, look, you're the specialist in this, Mike, I'm not a specialist in it, will you come in? Yes, I am always happy to go into churches. I provide pro-life apologetic workshops that are very interactive, but I'll also speak in your pulpit. Whatever I can do to serve you. But, I would want to assess what is the need and where's the congregation at? How can I help that pastor? But I'll do whatever I can.
What do you do? What do you say to the pastor that's, I don't know, feels like there's issue fatigue? We've got all this going on right now with Black Lives Matter, COVID, all the rest.
Right.
And it's been 47 years and they're like, been there, done that.
Yeah.
People are just tired of it all. And they're like, let's just move on. Or just, they're just.
Well, I do think there's some truth in that people are tired of hearing about abortion.
They feel like they can't do anything about it.
Right.
It's 47 years.
Right,
what more
right.
can we do?
Well, we can do an awful lot. And the reality is that most churches that would say that, and that's not true of everybody I know, but many pastors who would say that are just using it again as an excuse. But the guy who's really sincere, the pastor who's really sincere and saying, what do I do? My congregation's tired of this. They may actually be tired of it because they haven't actually been equipped biblically on it. So I actually think you can avoid a lot of the battle fatigue, if you will, or the issue fatigue, as you call it, Mark, by actually helping them see this, not just as another issue.
Not an issue.
This is the defining moral issue of our day. I mean, imagine
and their children's lives are hanging in the balance.
Right. What if 2,000 toddlers plus, 2,000 plus toddlers were dying every day?
It's got to be
by
personalized.
abortion? Nobody would think, well, this is just another issue.
Right.
So if your congregation is suffering from battle fatigue, or if you are, I think you need to look at it with a fresh perspective, a biblical perspective, and say, how do I help my congregation not be fatigued, but be energized? And there are ways to do that, and I'd love to have that conversation.
Well, we had the example, the George Floyd killing and how that just ignited all this discussion, all the riots and such. But in the church, this discussion ignited, all over the country. And it was because we came to the truth of what happened. They saw it, a real person being killed right before our eyes.
Right.
And I think what we do often is we don't think of the unborn as persons, really. We just think, it's an issue. It's another one of these many issues that we need to deal with.
That's exactly right. And look, the pastor is first and foremost a sheep protector. That's his job, whether he's protecting the flock from false doctrine, from gossip and slander, or from hired assassins, killers who have masqueraded as doctors.
And there are babies dying in the
doctors,
churches, right?
Absolutely.
25% of all the abortions are committed by women that profess to be evangelical Christians, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I had a man in Cleveland several years ago came up to me afterwards, and I've had this kind of story multiple times, but this man stayed in my mind. He came up to me, great big muscular guy, tears in his eyes, moistened eyes, and he said to me, thanks for what you shared tonight. I'm responsible for 7 abortions. It's naive to think this isn't happening in our own flocks. It is happening.
Well, it's easy to cover it up because you don't see the babies, right?
That's right.
But what is it? 25% of all abortions are committed by women who claim to be evangelical Christians. Right. And it's the same number in the Catholic Church, pretty much.
Can I just interject very quickly? I think a lot of churches and pastors think that they have to choose. Am I going to speak up for the unborn, or am I going to be about the gospel? I know we kind of hit on that already, but I want to say this. That is a false dilemma.
Right.
Okay. These are not competing interests. We can, in the same sermon, on the same Sunday morning, we can boldly declare abortion for the evil that it is in no uncertain terms, and yet hold out the word of life compassionately to those who have had abortion experiences. Jesus said, "The Son will set you. The Son will set you free." John 8:36. If we believe that, why would we hide that message from our congregations?
I don't know. We're talking with Mike Spencer. Go to projectlifevoice.com if you're interested in having him come in meet with you, if you're a pastor, or if you'd like to have him come speak at your church or at your high school, anywhere. He can come in and do some equipping, some apologetics training as well. Mike, it occurred to me there are a lot of churches that support pregnancy resource centers, and which is great. We want them to, but they're rarely, generally, I would say, I think at least in my experience, not really supporting pro-life activism, apologetics training, really trying to understand the worldview. Why do you think that is? And I'm not coming down on pastors or churches that support PRCs because they need support.
Part of it to be charitable here, and I'm sincere when I say this, I think a lot of pastors really do want to be involved. They want to be engaged somehow. And that's a good way to do it. It's a meaningful way to do it. I do a lot of work with pregnancy centers. I speak at a lot of their banquets, and I thank God for these centers. But I think it's become, for a lot of pastors, sort of a safe place. Like, I can do that. I can throw money at this ministry.
It doesn't cost much.
Yeah. And I would say this. If your church is signing up for the local baby bottle drive or the diaper drive, this is a good thing. I wish more churches would do it.
Right.
But that's not a substitute for bold, biblical, compassionate, redemptive preaching in the pulpit. Pastors have a job to do that's separate from
And
the
outreach
job.
and ministry that actually at
Absolutely.
the abortion
Yes,
clinics or
you're
what
right,
have
not
you.
just in the four walls
Right.
of the church, but to go out.
Right, like we do.
We raised our children. My wife and I raised our children outside of the abortion clinic in Fort Wayne, and it was one of the best things for them. It profoundly shaped their lives. And I know not everybody's going to do that, but there should be some tangible way that we are actually engaged in this battle and not just talking about it or throwing money at it.
And there are ministries
And
to
there are
support them,
plenty of
like our
opportunities. Right.
ministry,
That's
of
right.
course.
That's right.
All right. Well, we got about 5 minutes left here, Mike. Let me ask you a couple more things. Is the Bible silent on abortion? Now, I understand pastors are going to say, no, of course not. I know the passages, but a lot of people will say, well, it never really speaks directly to it, does it?
Right. Well, the Bible never specifically mentions the word abortion in either the Old or the New Testament.
I had no idea. I know the concept of it.
Right. But the Bible's not silent on the subject of abortion. Here's why. Abortion is just a method of killing innocent human beings. I mean, think about it. The Bible's also silent then on beating somebody to death with a baseball bat or shooting somebody with a 9mm Glock.
Right.
We don't need a Bible verse to expressly state that killing people in this way through abortion is wrong any more than we need a Bible verse to say, as Francis Beckwith says, that suffocating somebody with a pillow is wrong. We don't need a Bible verse that says that. Nor do we need a Bible verse that says what classes of people we can't unjustly kill. For instance, nowhere does the Bible say thou shalt not murder Hispanics, or thou shalt not murder freshmen in high school. We don't need that. We only need to know that the Bible clearly and routinely, frequently condemns the unjust shedding of innocent human blood.
Exactly.
And then we need to know what is a human being, and we go to the science of human embryology for that. And it makes it clear that you are a human being from the moment of conception, a distinct, living, whole human being. So we can do the math very quickly. The Bible clearly condemns the dismemberment, the decapitation, the disemboweling, the burning, and the suffocating of children in the womb. Romans 1 talks about evil men who would invent ways of doing evil, right? And nowhere is that evil intervention more obvious or more evident than in the way evil men have devised to kill each other in the womb, or to kill precious children in the womb. We don't need those kinds of verses. This assumption that what the Bible does not expressly condemn, it therefore condones, is ridiculous.
Well, Bill Clinton said it did. It didn't have a verse, so he must have been right.
Yeah, that's right.
Anyway, we're heading into November 3rd, an election coming up, a big election, and a lot of the pulpits, people are going to be a little bit concerned about bringing up politics. They'll say, "Well, this isn't the time." How do you respond to that? Because I know even my pastor is like, don't look to November 3rd to solve all our problems. And I agree. It's not where we look for our answers. Sure. But a lot of pastors are afraid to even bring it up because it sounds political, or in a political season. It's controversial. It's divisive, et cetera, et cetera. If you would just leave them with a parting word.
Well, this is not ultimately, again, I've admitted it's a political issue, but it's not ultimately an issue of partisanship. It is an
but
issue
it does.
of
I mean, it
lordship.
does fall on political. You got Republicans who are pro-life,
Absolutely
and you
does.
have Democrats who are
Right.
pro-abortion.
Well, this
is.
is not ultimately an issue of partisanship. It is an issue of lordship. Christ is, as shepherds, we tell our congregations how to manage their money, how to treat their spouses, how to raise their kids, how to behave sexually. But for some reason, this has become off limits. And I don't understand that.
Very partisan. I mean, it is partisan now. It didn't used to be that way.
It has become very partisan, but a pastor can easily get up in the pulpit and boldly say abortion is evil, and to vote for candidates of any party that want to rob an entire class of our citizenry, their most fundamental right, the right to life, is wrong. It is immoral. It is sin. This is part of the confusion over this being a political issue and off limits for the church is, again, comes back to the fact that we need to instruct our flocks. We need to teach them how to think biblically. We're not single issue. I'm not a single issue voter, but I think this happens to be the single most pressing issue.
No doubt.
And we should give greater worth or greater weight to it as we go into the voting booth.
All right. Well, we got about 30 seconds left. Let's wrap it up. Speak to the pastor. I'm with Mike Spencer here, pro-life. What is it? ProLifeVoice.com.
Project Life Voice.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
If you would, just give us some parting words.
Well, Pastor, I would just say to those of you who are faithful, and I'm sure there are many of them watching today, I just want to encourage you, don't become fatigued. Don't give up the fight. Keep at it. God honors and blesses faithfulness. And to those of you who are not in the battle, get in the battle. You need to be in the battle. And
you can check out Mike at pro-life. I keep saying that, Mike. I'm sorry. ProjectLifeVoice.com. It'll come to me after a while. ProjectLifeVoice.com. Mike Spencer's been my guest. He was with LTI for 8 years with Scott Klusendorf. Comes highly recommended. So if you're a pastor within the sound of my voice, you need to check out Mike, give him a call, check out his website at projectlifevoice.com. We'll see you next time. God bless you. God bless America. And remember, America, to bless God.
You've been listening to Mark Harrington, your radio activist. For more information on how to become a witness against the evil plague in America, call Created Equal at 614-269-7808. That's 614-269-7808. Or go online to createdequal.net. Createdequal.net. Be sure to tune to the Mark Harrington Show next time for your marching orders in the culture war.